Let's jump into USC, a little bit of USC football here. We're going to preview them. Chris, what do you think about the Trojans?
Okay. We know Lincoln Riley. This is second year. Seems like he's been there longer than that just because the guy's been so goddamn successful everywhere he's been. We all remember his times at Oklahoma. Big thing here. Last year, I'll rattle off last year's stats. Finished 11-3, 8-1 in conference. Finished 12th in the AP poll last year with that loss to Tulane, which was very disappointing. I believe it was the Cotton Bowl, Christian. They averaged 41.1 points per game, Christian. It don't get much better than that. Put them third in the country last year. Here's the problem. Gave up 29.2, though. 94th out of 132 teams last year. I've been talking about this a lot with Lincoln Riley teams. They don't know how to play defense for some reason. Strength of schedule was 16th last year, which actually surprised me when I saw the stat. And we all know they lost to Tulane last year in the Cotton Bowl, which was kind of disappointing when you got Caleb Williams, Heisman Trophy winner. He is back this year. Christian, I'm going to kick it over to you for a little more deep dive on the offensive stats here.
Yeah.
But I got a few things to say about Lincoln Riley. I'm sure we're going to touch on him here quickly. By the way, hi, Kyler Peterson. Nice to see you back. Good to see you in the chat, buddy.
Yeah, Chris, like you were saying, I mean, he's coming off of a pretty damn good first year at USC. I mean, they went 11-3 last year. Chris, did you know this? I'm going to give you a stat here. I don't know if you knew this or not. Yeah. Hopefully you did. In 7 seasons as a head coach, this is only the second time that Lincoln Riley returns as starting quarterback.
Surprising, but then you think about who his quarterbacks were. You know what I mean? What do you have? Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Jalen Hurts. I mean, those guys all turned out to be awesome. They're awesome, great college quarterbacks. Obviously, I'm not going to talk about Baker too much here. This is an NFL show, but
right.
Yeah, here we are.
I mean, Chris, look, we know what Caleb Williams can do and what he can do when he's at his best. Last year, obviously, he won the Heisman, and he can be elite, dude, provided he gets on the same page as some of this newly added talent. Now, gone are leading rushers Travis Dye and leading receiver Jordan Addison last year, but they do bring back Austin Jones, who put up 900 yards and 6 touchdowns last year, as well as South Carolina transfer Marshawn Lloyd, who had 700 yards and 11 touchdowns last year. I think the running game is going to be better this year. They're going to do some really good things. They're going to have some depth there. The receivers we touched on, losing a guy like Jordan Addison, obviously a first-round wide receiver. He was one of the best wide receivers in all of college football for the better part of the last 2 years. I mean, so that's tough when you kind of lose that. But they do get back Dorian Singer and they bring in Dorian Singer and Taj Washington, who collectively last year had 1,800 yards and 12 touchdowns between the two of them. Offensive line, I would say, is probably going to be the biggest question mark. The biggest question mark there, but they should be okay. They got some guys that could probably start, in the Pac-12 and start for them this year. To me, and you touched on it, Chris, the defense. Now, kind of talk to me a little more about the defense. What do you think about them?
That's the big thing. They got a weird stat, Christian. They led the country last year in turnover margin, which is crazy.
Yeah.
But you had 8th worst, yards per play though, out of the whole nation. Like, isn't that a weird? You think most of the time, everybody that's ever played football knows that. Oh, if you can get turnovers, right? I mean, anybody who wins a turnover battle in a game usually wins, right? Not the case for USC last year. Not that they didn't win games, guys. It's just their defense was giving up 30 points a game, though. That's crazy to me. And that's the question mark this year. And this is where I'm bringing back with Lincoln Riley. And this is where I'm going back to. I know you want to touch on the defense. This is where I drop in Lincoln Riley. He's a crazy great offensive mind. The NFL has wanted him for years, right? We've known this because he's just a quarterback whisperer. This guy can amazing on the offensive side of the ball. But I really wonder, can you? And you don't have to necessarily coach up the defense, but are you bringing anybody in to coach up the defense? He's 1-4 in bowl games, though. That's the other thing, and it fell on their defense last year. I'm not saying Tulane is a bad football team. They bring back Pratt this year. Tulane's going to be really good again. But you gave up like 43 points in a game. I remember watching that game, and I'm thinking USC is going to run away with this one. Just too much talent. Well, their offense the offense did what it was supposed to. You can't be giving up 40 points a game. We saw it. Same thing with Oklahoma when he was there too. Offense was great. I mean, that's the big question mark with this guy and the defensive side of the ball, Christian. I think they will. I actually do truly think they are going to be better this year. I think it's hard for them to be worse.
I agree. I mean, unless they slip back to like 100 and something, on defense. But Chris, I think they're going to be better on defense this year just because of, their projected, their projected front seven is loaded. I mean, let's take a look at this here, dude. This defense is going to be completely different. They only are getting back one starter from last year on that front seven. The defense is going to be led by 5-star defensive tackle and UGA transfer Big Bear Alexander, who's going to make his presence known. I mean, this kid is a true freshman last year, came in, and he played.
To add to this, to interrupt you here, if you guys haven't watched this kid play, dude, to start on a Georgia defense as a freshman in the SEC, unbelievable. That's and Georgia is loaded on defense. That's how good that kid is. That's amazing. It actually surprises me he transferred, to be honest.
It kind of, it doesn't really me, just because if you go back and look at it, I mean, he transferred high schools like 3 times. So, I mean, that's just the age. That's just the age we're in, right? I mean, it's kind of one of those things where kids will go somewhere with the full intentions of not staying 4 years. They know, hey, we've talked about it, the whole Raiola thing, right? I mean, it's kind of prevalent to this. He committed to Georgia. He'll probably end up at Georgia for a year or two and then transfer to, Nebraska or USC or God only knows where. So we'll end up seeing. But, they also bring in Texas A&M transfer defensive end Anthony Lucas, who was part of that best recruiting class of all time for Jimbo Fisher and the Aggies back in, was that 2021, if I'm not mistaken?
Yep.
Yeah. And so, or no, maybe, I think it was 2022. That's right. He was a four-star player. I mean, he played a little bit last year. So, again, this is a very young, very talented front seven. Linebackers are going to be led by Oklahoma State transfer Mason Cobb, who put up 96 tackles last year. And also they bring back Eric Gentry, who is going to hold things down at the will linebacker spot as well. Everything I've seen on this Will Gentry kid, they call him a unicorn. They say he's going to be pretty good. Chris, you know how we feel about it. Anytime you can get a fearsome front seven to come in and be able to set the tone for you, it makes things easier on those cornerbacks, as well as the safeties. They don't have to, they don't have to be as tight in their coverage. They don't have to be as on the ball with it. It can affect the quarterback and throw everything off from that standpoint. The good news is, though, they've got a ball hawk back there in Kalen Bullock, who's going to be their safety and hold things in the back half and the outfield down for them.
Yeah, no, that's the big thing. Like I said, I do think that overall, you mentioned all the players, the names, they have to be better this year. If they want to, and let's be honest, Lincoln Riley, his standard is set. He's got to get to the playoffs this year, right, Christian? I mean, you got returning Heisman winner. I mean, let's be honest, man. They've been roaming around. I know they haven't won the Pac-12. Utah's been controlling that, but let's be honest. Lincoln Riley's probably got more talent than anybody in the Pac-12. Let's just throw that out there. I think so, especially the last 2 years.
Man, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, fans of the show will probably appreciate this. USC fans will call us haters, but you know what? You know what they call Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma?
Go ahead, Christian, because I know what it is, I think.
They call him that bitch out west now. They are not going to let that go. No, anytime soon, probably.
Well, he stole Caleb Williams, who was there, and brought him over too.
Oh yeah,
and a bunch of other guys.
Yeah, that's and I can't blame him. I mean, like I said, if somebody poached Kirby Smart or somebody like that, I'd be pretty pissed.
Yeah.
Well, Chris, let's take a look here. The record predictions. I think I went first last week. I want to see what your thoughts are going forward here.
Here, I'll try to make this relatively quick. You guys know how I like to drag on about some of these teams. I go on tangents, but overall, I'll start off. I have USC going 11-1 this year, which is awesome. But obviously the San Jose State game, that's one of those week 0 games, super early. By the way, college football is like 3.5 weeks away. I'm super pumped. We got Nevada That's a dub. Stanford probably going to be one of the worst teams in the Pac-12. Not worried there. Arizona State, one of those teams that I'll be honest with you, we never talk about. I don't think anybody talks about them. Not relevant. Colorado. Sorry, Colorado fans. Not sorry, actually. You guys are going to get trumped. Skull drug, if I will, across the football field in that game against USC. Talent level on USC is bar none over here. Arizona, not worried about them either. Notre Dame will be an interesting game. Notre Dame has kind of a tough schedule. I think they got like Clemson, Ohio State, and USC this year. And I don't think Notre Dame's going to be bad. We don't talk about them a ton, but I think USC is just still the better team, even though that's played in South Bend this year. Utah, this is a game right here that I don't know what it is if it's just Utah in general, but they just own USC. I mean, they for some reason. I think this is the year, though, Christian, where USC does get the nod. I hate to say that because I love Utah, my favorite team in the Pac-12. But I'm going to chalk up another win for USC here. Cal, not overly worried about Cal. I don't even remember the last time I've watched them play football. Washington, very tough game. Washington, I'm relatively high on this year as well. I don't got Daniel in the chat to tell me how great Washington is, but we know that they're going to be pretty damn good this year. I either have them, and this is where I'm going to wrap this up, guys, is either a loss at Oregon, which is what I have penciled on my sheet over here, but I think it could be Oregon or Washington. UCLA is going to be a tough game. It always is, kind of a rivalry game between those two schools. UCLA, who we talked about last week, I believe it was, I have them going 8-4. So tough end of the year schedule right there with those three teams, in my opinion. I think USC loses one of those, and I think they end up 11-1. Obviously playing in the Pac-12 title game. Christian, tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me where I'm right. Tell me I'm an idiot. I mean,
I can't disagree with you, Chris. I mean, looking at this schedule, the good news for USC is they have a shit ton of transfers on this roster, right? I mean, just across the board, they kind of bring in a bunch of transfers, both sides of the ball. Here is where I look at this. It's backloaded, so they really don't play anybody for like until October 14th, I mean, so they've got a lot of time to gel, right, and kind of get on par and do what they need to do here. So I think that's good. Chris, I'm right with you on it, man. I got them pegged at 11-1, maybe 10-2, but to me, if they're going to lose, it's probably going to be to Washington, Notre Dame, Utah, or Oregon. So 11-1, maybe 10-2. Some people are going to say we're crazy. We're going 12-0 this year. Listen, don't forget you got Lincoln Riley as a head coach. All right, and let's just be honest. Lincoln Riley-led teams always figure out a way every single year to lose at least one game in the regular season.
Yes, they do.
Bar none. I mean, bar none, dude. He always does. He's not a bad coach. I mean, he's probably had one of the best first 6-7 years, other than not winning a national championship, in college football, that you could have. I mean, for me, Chris, the bang for my buck, I think they'll be a playoff team this year, but I think that they might have at least one loss on this record.
Christian, I gotta throw this in for my favorite fan base in the world, the Ohio State man. Who does Lincoln Riley remind you of as a head coach that's currently coaching in college football? You know where I'm going with this.
I mean, he kind of reminds me a little bit of Ryan Day. I think the biggest difference, Ryan Day's at least won one playoff game.
Yeah, exactly. I just had to throw that out there. When I think about Lincoln Riley, I think about Ryan Day. I always compare the two. They're great offensive minds. I'm not going to take that away from them. Great quarterback.
Oh, yeah.
Gurus. They always seem to put the pieces in place as far as the offense goes. It's just always the defensive side of the ball, man. They always have they both have that stigma where they can't win playoff games or bowl games. You know what I mean? Where they just can't get it done. So.
Yeah, and I'm looking back kind of to summarize this here, and then we'll jump into some more of the chat and stuff like that. Like, you look at some of these games, Chris, and like it's really not bad. Some of these games like Colorado. Well, I mean, I can't really talk about that. He gave up 17 points to Colorado. A couple of these games, like they actually played defense, and you're like, okay,
look again, Arizona giving up 37, 35 against a Cal team. Colorado sucks. 45 to UCLA, who wasn't a bad team last year. They shocked some people, but it just surprises me. 47 to Utah, that's where I think it's surprising to me, that part of it. And you're right, though.
No, and that's what I was gonna say. Like, like with Ohio State will do something really weird where they'll play like a couple of games, and they'll look like a Big Ten defense, and then they get into a game against Georgia or Michigan or whoever, Penn State, and then they'll give up like 40 some odd points, and you're like, what are we doing? How did you give up that many total yards and points, and pretty much just completely ruin your defensive standings for the year and make it just throw all that out the windows because you actually played somebody. And I think that could be the same argument with USC, right? Or Lincoln Riley and Oklahoma led teams.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're not wrong about that. And that's it. Like I said, I have USC finishing, or I have them I think I have them sitting 5th in my polls right now. They're going to be really good this year. I think they're probably, I should have looked this up, but I believe I think they're the favorites though to win the Pac-12 this year. Sorry, Utah fans, you guys are probably not going to three-peat this year, but I like I said, the Pac-12 actually this year pretty loaded. There's a lot of good quarterbacks in this league. Problem is, man, you're bringing back a Heisman candidate. You got Lincoln Riley. They're going to put up some numbers. Like I said, unless their defense completely shits the bed again. Yeah, they're going to probably lose that one regular season game, Christian. You make a good point about Lincoln Riley. He's done that, excuse me, at Oklahoma too. So interesting year for USC. Kind of a make or break deal. I actually think that like they end up going like 9-3 and stuff. I mean, you're gonna hear a lot of talk. Now, I don't mean that Lincoln Riley's getting fired or anything, but I think USC, this is kind of their year, right? They're really talking, kind of like the Florida State fans, the Texas fans of the world. They want to be cracking this top 4 and seeing themselves, in a playoff situation once.